Hi guys, this is Tasha Smith-DeLeon, and this is Backyard Art Talk, where I sit down with my guests and we chat over some wine. So today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with artist Marion Tisdale IV.
Ew.
So my question that I do want to start with first is your name, Marion Tisdale IV.
Yes.
We've talked about your name before, it being a legacy of first. So I thought that was the best place to start before we get more into your art, explaining what that legacy means to you and what that legacy is.
Yeah, okay. So I am, as you said, Marion Tisdale IV. I am basically a tradition in my family. They're very old school, very southern, from South Carolina. That the firstborn son carries the name Marion, which actually only became legitimized because of my mom. But to go all the way back to the first Marion, who was the first person in his family born outside of enslavement. Funny enough, though, his father's name was Adam, which I always found was very hilarious. And then he was a sharecropper most of his life, passed away in the 60s, had one child, Marion Tisdale Jr. He was the first one to graduate high school and I believe also learned how to read in his family because he ended up being a minister. Went on to raise 15 children, one of which being my dad, but 11 of them weren't his. So my dad got the name even though he technically wasn't the firstborn in the house.
Oh, wow.
He's only the 13th child of my grandmother, but the first son and the oldest of my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I was the first one to go to college.
Yes.
So yeah.
So I'm looking for Marion Jr. to be the first of another long legacy.
You know.
But that's beautiful. Thank you for going in depth about what that legacy means to you and what that legacy is concerning your name. As the first person to go to college, and if you could say where you went to college.
The Morehouse College, class of 2021. You're
Period.
welcome. Graduated during the pandemic, come hella hot water.
One of the pandemic babies.
Ooh, child.
Oh, listen. If I can ask, being an artist coming from Morehouse, how do you feel Morehouse has prepared you for your art career, or how has it not prepared you for your art career?
I think Morehouse did a pretty good job in the sense that the AUC kind of is three universities that all feed into each other. So for a lot of the arts majors that went to Morehouse, a lot of us ended up doing a lot of classes through Spelman. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my major courses were with teachers who were teaching other Spelmanites. So I always tell people I was the only one. One semester actually had a class at Clark, Morehouse, and Spelman. As you can probably imagine, the body was key back then because that was a lot of running around to be doing, especially carrying.
Yeah, back to forth. How long is that?
Let's see.
In minutes.
Probably like a good 30. Like, I know I was hitting a mile a day. To be young and 20 again. Again. My God. Yeah. Your boy got his steps in. That's
the way to do it.
But there was a lot of, I guess, I liked how the AUC offers collaboration with a lot of things that they do. There were a few times where I wish that those amenities at Spelman were also here at Morehouse, just because Spelman, and this is, I feel like perfectly fair, was very much like all men off the campus at midnight, which... Yeah, that's fair. Although one time I did fall asleep in the computer lab, and we used to say that if you were on Spelman's campus past a certain point, they would shoot you with rubber bullets. So I remember like waking up in the computer lab after dozing off. It's 11:45 at night. I like grab all my stuff and I book it towards the back gate, which luckily was still open. Because I was like, I'm not about to get shot by no rubber bullets. I can't do it. I'm not that fast. It's a myth from what I've never heard no one get shot by no rubber bullet. But at the same time, this is Atlanta. So I wasn't gonna risk it.
No, that's a fact.
I was going home. We was in the West End. So no, I wasn't playing with that one.
No. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where do you get your artistic talent from? From your family, or is this something that you connected with at a young age?
So a little bit of both. I have relatives that draw. I have an uncle named David who actually illustrated a children's book when he was a little bit younger. Beautiful. I have a cousin named Lexi who draws as well. And then my twin sister, she's a musician, and my older sister draws. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah.
Wait, hold up. Sorry. Whoa.
You didn't know I was a twin?
No, I didn't know you were a twin.
Yeah, I have a twin sister. So it's older sister, twin sister, me, and then my 4 little brothers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mary,
yeah.
what's your sister's name?
Maya? Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, she went to school for music. She studied at Wingate, and she plays violin.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Does she still live here in Raleigh?
Yeah, we both still live at home.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Because I just needed to just.
Yeah.
You were like my twin, and I was like, where have I been?
No, there are like 3 sets of twins that work at the museum.
Oh,
Yeah, because
yeah.
there's us, the guard Diana, and then Hanif has a twin brother.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Oh my god. So it's literally in the family because your sister is musically talented,
Yeah, so she
and
went
you're
for music,
artistically
and
talented.
I went for artists. And yeah, I started drawing like around the time I was 4. I always tell people I could draw longer than I could talk properly because I also had a speech impediment in the lisp. So up until 5th grade, words were just kind of abstract. Let's just say that.
We're making our own words.
If I get drunk enough, it'll happen again. That's just the impediment never leaves you.
Yeah, you just learn how to.
Yeah, I always tell people I've been drawing longer than I've been talking because of that. So yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing. Let's dive a bit more into your art. What is your art trying to communicate, or what do you want it to communicate?
At the moment, it's dealing with a lot with rage and exhaustion. A lot of times, something that I've noticed, especially with American poverty, once you are Black and impoverished in this country, people want to erase you as much as possible. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't even matter if you somehow make it out the hood or this and that. People want you to leave that alone. Like, as much as I loved my time at the AUC, there were quite a few professors like, can you stop saying nigga in class? But I'm like, but nigga, where else would I say it? Like, I'm at the HBCU. Literally. Why would I not say it?
Right?
Is that not the point? Like, I
to be myself.
I went to a PWI. Everyone's nigga now.
Right? Definitely not saying it there.
Shoot, they was trying to say it for me. That's the thing. Like, but yeah, and at first I used to be like, okay, maybe it's just a matter of like things being proper. But when you go to a place like Morehouse and you go into like working in the arts and everything, you realize a lot of these elite spaces are highly performative. Yeah. And because of that, this whole idea that you being ghetto means you're not good enough to be in this space, I'm like, I've seen how some of y'all run. Y'all don't even answer emails and you want to talk about my class. My class? I think you should worry about other things. Or like even the performative of it, because so much of it is based around keeping people out. I remember one time when I was an intern a few years back, I was working with like these curators and they were trying to make the language more accessible. And so one of the people I was working with was like, the most accessible language you can make something is like 8th grade level. Because it's not too babyish and it's not too broad to where people can't get it. These curators were mad that they had to lower it to 8th grade. And I've always believed that if you cannot tell someone something simply, do you really know what you're talking about? Yeah. And lastly, you got the degree. Like, this isn't going to take away the degree. They're not going to take, you still have the debt. Sally Mae is still waiting for you every day, baby. You got the degree. Trust. Okay? You're fine. And all that to say that I'm just constantly dealing with this level of like accepting the fact that there are a lot of artists, Black artists even, who would rather my narrative not be seen because it is unapologetic. Like, I get so tired of the idea of like, if you're Black in the space, or if you're a Black body in a piece of artwork, you have to be so stoic. And I'm like, there's nothing stoic about our suffering. There's nothing stoic about the dehumanization that happens in the ghetto, but there is something stoic about refusing to die in those spaces. And I think that's when people get uncomfortable about that.
I agree 2000%. I think even for a lot of Black people, seeing what we might have considered, what we made it out of, what we've pushed down is harmful. But I think there's something very beautiful in what you're doing. We're trying to really unpack suffering, unpack like being silenced. Like Oprah, were you silent or silenced?
Come on, host. I see you.
Thank you, Oprah.
You know.
Thank you. But that's something very beautiful. It's very vulnerable. Yeah. And that's something that we've talked about before, is you putting your vulnerability out there. How has that worked for you and not?
It's a lot of the issue I feel like all Black artists face when it comes to vulnerability is the fact that, and this is something all Black artists who talk about the best art go through, is you are going to on some level be fetishized. Yeah. I remember I was working on this piece called Wound, on this series called Wound, and that was these portraits of black men I did, but they're bloodied and they're bruised. And it's a discussion about how many black men live with so much trauma. You know, like I said, I went to Morehouse. I remember there was this one night, I think a hurricane was blowing through, and the storms were like so bad, like I'm talking like wind. So they were like, y'all don't have classes, which is great because I didn't study for my test that week.
Right, thank you.
Look at the Lord.
I was gonna say, God.
But you know, we were just chilling, and we're all like young in our 20s. So like, why is anyone going to sleep at 4 a.m? Yeah. You know, and we just had some real conversations, and there were a lot of black men at Morehouse, myself included, who had survived things like sexual assault and just didn't know where that went. And there were even people in that conversation who didn't even want to admit what happened to them with those things. And I always, I don't want to say trivialize it, but I always say like, those sad nigga hour conversations at Morehouse got real. Yeah. Because there was nothing but niggas once again. So there was a lot of just releasing that happened with that. And it really sat with me on how we carry these things with us. And so as I was carrying wound, I was putting this piece on Instagram, there was a young white queer man who had texted me and said, I would love to commission a piece that's similar to something in that series. Already a red flag, because I didn't want that to be a series that had commissions involved with it. And on top of that, he insisted on like the body being shirtless and it somehow being about love and the wounded. It was very weird because he very much was like, I need this man to be beautiful, but I need him to be nude. And I'm sitting here like the entire point of this discussion is the ways in which when black people are not in emotional health or are constantly dealing with this trauma, the violence that happens with white supremacy can be all the more destructive because you now have no support system. Right. And he's sitting here talking about like, well, I want this because it would make me feel like something pretty is in my house. I'm like, this shit isn't pretty. This isn't. And why would it get you off that this black man is bruised and bloody too? And that's just one of the things that happens. And so that's kind of been, it's not something that makes you not want to stop making the work, but it is something that will have you be at these art shows and you're like, I could cuss everyone out in here and I feel like I would be justified, but I also need to eat. So I can't quite crash out the way I feel like I should be able to.
But can we dive a little bit into that? Because, you know, being an artist is tough. Being an artist is tough. It's fun. Yeah. 2000%. But it's also tough. Can we just talk more about that? And of course, we're going to go into the fun. We're going to go into the fun. But more about how it's been tough being an artist. And then if I could also throw in like a young black artist, because that's, of course, a part of your identity as well.
It really just comes down to like where you're at times, because there have been times where I think the hardest thing to realize with that is that because you're young, gifted, and black, people want to exploit you. Yes. And that's something that can be very disheartening at times. I remember I ended up doing an event last year with someone who I thought was like a friend of mine, but I ended up not getting paid. Which I'm like, how many times have we complained about people not getting paid here? Or there have been times where there have been black people who are like curators in this and third who feel like that they don't have to pay black artists in this and
like I can't say, because I'm not an artist, but as a curator, being in situations where I want to say what is on my mind, the things that I've been through, but like I'm probably gonna have to work with this person again. Exactly. I'm probably gonna have to work with this organization again. And keeping that in mind, like you said, young, gifted, and black, but young, gifted, and black also needs to pay the bills. Exactly. But as an artist just starting out, you're literally at the whim of so many people. Like, how do you protect yourself?
I always tell people, y'all don't want this country crazy. I'm very...
Let them know. Offer it.
And that's not to like be threatening or nothing, but like there are times where like I feel like we talk about code switching so much, but I also feel like you can weaponize what you do and do not let slip. Yeah. And so I remember like there have been times where like even when you went to the lesson I was teaching, you asked us like every time you try to greet someone, your accent comes out more. Yes. Because I want them to feel comfortable. And so I think sometimes what you have to do is like I can turn off that sweetness very quickly, and sometimes doing that makes people like, oh, maybe not this one. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe, because this country accent can go the fuck away. Yeah. Like it's a very, and it's not even about like being like, oh, I'm gonna like beat you down, but it's a very much like I'm not the one for that, And I feel like there has to be a lot of boundaries. I I think also being very upfront, like, am I getting paid?
Yes.
Is a very good question, because once you ask that question, see their reaction, that should let you know if you should or shouldn't navigate anything with this person. Because if they don't want to find a way for you to get paid,
it ain't it.
That's a little weird. That's a little weird. There has been a lot of artwork that I've had to let go of, aside from it being stolen. But even like the first mural I did, I got gentrified out of that house, and so one of the last things I had to do was destroy it.
My God.
So, but even with that, I didn't cover it completely because, as you know, when you're being pushed into homelessness, the finances are not financing. So I think I have them little separate pieces of paint and some green acrylic, and I was like, I'm gonna mix this together, put a little water, and see if I can make this work.
Yes.
And it, you know, you can't tell what it was, but you can tell something was there.
Yeah.
You know.
That's it. Left your mark.
I guess.
All right, let's get into the fun and talk more about your art. Specifically, there's a whore. Hard H.
Hard H.
Hard H.
Hard H. Hard H. Shout out to the women of the night. But Hard H.
Hard H. There's a whore in College Park. Let's talk more about that.
Yes. So that more so came from, I've been playing with this idea of, you know, like Lovecraftian horror. And like there are these deities in his books and his mythos where it's like the more they become powerful, the more insane the people around them become. And one thing that I know, especially like the pandemic and like even with my neighborhood being gentrified more, the more gentrification happens, the more violent the neighborhood gets. Like I remember one of the pieces, there's like a final piece when that has like kind of an amalgamation of everything with it. And I think there'll be pictures somewhere. If not, you can feel free to throw them in and whatnot. But one of them is these two women on the phone, and basically the conversation is like, I told you they weren't gonna move that damn bus stop. And the reason I was told about that one is because of something that actually happened. As you know, I have a lot of little brothers. They're all still in school. And the neighborhood we live in isn't always the best. It's gentrified to hell, but it's not the best. And so we call them the apartments of mischief, just because when I tell you like the light don't work, like it's next to an abandoned building, like very few people live there, all this, that, and third, but it's right there. And none of the kids who go on that bus stop live there. And there have been, I remember there was a year where a 16-year-old girl got stabbed to death over there. And the very next day, I just took my brother to the bus stop, and we saw yet again another street side memorial of candles and flowers in the spot. And I think her mama was watching it, because every time we went over there for a week, that candle was lit. Like somebody made sure that candle stayed lit. And my mom and all the other ones were like, we need to get these kids up out of here, because there's another bus stop at the top of the hill where some of the kids actually live, and it's a lot safer. They go to Wake County. They said there's been a murder. There's been multiple crimes. And then there's like Capitol Greenway goes through my neighborhood. But because it's the hood, people don't think people in the hood need lights. And so as you're going down Garner Road getting to my house, when it gets dark and that park is there, it's just this black void. And you don't know what's in there. And so anything could be going on in there. I know there are people who have squatted in there before. There have been times where I've like walked home from doing events, and it's just something about that I can't see anything right here is wild. And so we went to Wake County. Wake County said they happily will not move that bus stop. And then when I was adding that onto the painting and driving up that road, we had to go around because there was another murder right there. And so like that happened. I remember working on the piece that night, going into work the next day. And I haven't had major anxiety attacks really since I've left college. But I'm at the point now where I realize that, is it that you don't have anxiety attacks, or that you've gotten used to them to the point where you don't know that they're happening? Because I remember that next day I was like counting the drawers and everything. And we had gotten, where I work, like a $150 donation through a check. But then someone had paid $250 in cash. But I guess because like I also didn't sleep that night. So I guess because of my wires crossed, I was like, where's the $150 in cash? Meanwhile, that was the check. So I literally was like turning up the entire front desk. I'm like, where is this money? And it got to the point where like my supervisor was like, man, that money doesn't exist. And yeah, and I'm not saying my department looked at me like I was crazy, but it was very much a moment where they're like, you know, he normally is not, he's about that money. Like, he just, not to do my own, but I write my money, I write out the math when I count money. I was just raised like that. All that to say that like it was very interesting, because that still reminded me that those things still can provide a shell shock to you. Because like even with that, like I don't play with nobody's money. So like for me to be over looking for imaginary money, your boy was stressed. Like, and that just all kind of goes to say, like, I just feel like there's so much dehumanization that happens when it comes to the American ghetto that we don't talk about it. Which is why, like, when it came to this story, I love horror. As you can probably imagine, I like all things creepy. I'm not sure if you can tell, but this is a Junji Ito t-shirt. If you like manga, if you can zoom in on that.
Zoom in.
I'm not going to flash you, I swear. They didn't pay me enough for that.
Paid you in wine.
Okay. And they would have to get looking for that. Yes. Sorry, babies.
Yes.
But and so I started kind of like getting into the writing. Like I mentioned, my twin, she is a musician, but she also always called herself a writer. I wish she would do a little bit more with it, but artists come in their own time. Yes. But one of the things I ended up writing was just this little synopsis of it, because I didn't have anyone for a while this to go, so I'll tipsily read this. I'm not a public speaker.
It's fine.
But if I start doing voices, I just know that I kind of write. Sometimes the voices that I'm writing in, I want to kind of come to life. Right. And so, oh my God, I'm so nervous. It's only a page and a half, but it's called "It Was Born from Rot." It was born from rot and fathered by filth. No one knows where it came from or how it got here. They just feel it. It isn't quiet. And if you listen hard enough, you can hear it moaning and groaning as it drags itself to and fro. The thick, wet squelch of untreated, semi-crusted over flesh scraping over rancid sewer drains echoes throughout Parksway. This is the fictional neighborhood I named everything with. Issuing warnings to the wannabe gangsters and shit-talkers who ain't ready for them when the lights really come out. No one knows who or what the thing is or where it came from, but it's there, like a ghost haunting all of us. It knows, it knows everything. It knows what the bodies are, who the father is, but we know nothing. And why is it here? And are we prepared for its real answer? My daddy said it was born grimy and twisted, unwanted during the crack era, and was incubated by the corpses of black boys made men through selling. That it was raised on the screams of black girls who wouldn't have to be fast if they weren't being chased. It breathes a poison cloud of cigarette ash and crack house fumes that chokes the air itself. It doesn't need to eat, but it hunts, and it lies in wait. It lies in wait for the broken and the burned, for those who have no hope and never knew where it was. You might call them junkies, but they had names, forgotten, unheard, but names nonetheless. But the thing doesn't need such humanities, because there's not a God who knows the names of his disciples. It is a tyrant of a deity, gluttonous with suffering. Is the God of the lesser dead, drunk off of a stream of blood and viscera and rotted corpses. Some people's gods are marked with the scars of crucifixion. The thing is riddled in track marks. And some gods won't reveal themselves to the disciples, but the thing wants you to take in all of the rot, the fumes, and even the taste. It doesn't look like anything you've ever seen. It is a starved, undying force that, if left to its own devices, would cannibalize its own flesh. It is a mound of ill-fated body parts, though with every movement screeches in agony. Freckled with ever-draining pustules in every color you can imagine, crusting and kicking over again and again. Heads somewhat fused at the throats, eyes, ears to arms, chest to legs, etc., and organs that have dried, drained, and deteriorated. They scream, not sure if they are dying or if this is just hell. And I went into the writing because I love the idea of drawing, but a word is literal. A drawing can be interpreted, and I wanted there to be that understanding of it and that love of dehumanization. And there were just a lot of things I wanted to be let out there. So it was born from rot. That's kind of like, if you're into like cartoons and animation, when people have a show they call like the Bible, which is like the document of like all of what that universe is supposed to encompass. So I considered this to be what that is for there's a horror in college part.
Yeah. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
One, you should do more writing.
Thank you.
Because like the religious undertones really come out within your writing that helps to drive what you're trying to get at.
Thank you.
Well, just to take a step back, because I want to say that I love you trying to, like, there's no miscommunication. This is what this is about. Yeah. And this is where this is going. Let's start with the first image, which y'all will see popping up now. The first image for your mural. Yes. And how that ties in with your writing and the overall message.
So at the moment, because I think it's mostly finished at this point in time, By the time we get the pictures, it might be completely finished. But the elements that are going to be there that I've added recently is it's this face that's being this black face, obviously, and I made sure that you knew it was black because I put him in a do rag. You cannot deny that that is a black child.
Right.
And this face is like kind of growing out and morphing into this like monstrosity and whatnot. And he's in this shape that is that of a black house that's surrounded by flames, and the background is dotted with like these red smeared finger handprints and everything. And that was really to talk about the fact that the rot in this situation is becoming more powerful because the neighborhood is being destroyed. And people forget that gentrification is dehumanizing. It's such, and then they don't want to talk about how you become a stranger in your own place. Like I remember there was a time, and it was like summer, I think, towards, it was the summer. It was a late part of the summer, like during 2020, right in the midst of the pandemic. And me and my family were all sitting out on the porch, because we're like, hey, you know, we're by ourselves. Like, ain't no one coming. Like, we are on the porch. Ain't no one coming over here. No, it's just the people who live here ain't gone nowhere in months.
Chilling.
And so we sitting there chilling, enjoying our time. It's a late summer night, you know, just cutting up, you know, doing, you know, what we do. And we see this white couple come in that recently moved in that has a black child. And this is no shade to nobody. Stop taking black children. You're not going to learn how to do black hair. I'm going to leave that there. And we say that because as they walk by, the kid waved, we waved back, but the parents shot us the dirtiest look that I have ever seen. They just were like,
what?
Let's go. First of all, why are you walking through John Street 11:30 at night with your child? You have a car. Let's ask that question first. And secondly, why is his hair not combed? Everyone on this porch got their hair combed but him. So what we doing?
You're looking at us like we crazy.
Okay, my cornrows were fresh that day. But like all that to say, like there's this veneer that the people who move in these neighborhoods where they don't have to care.
To get back into that first, you know, image when thinking about the whore in College Park, can we talk about like the handprints and what that signifies? When thinking about like gentrification and this idea of it starts within your home.
I mainly dealt with the handprints just because I wanted it to be as foreboding as possible. That was something I kind of learned when I was like still in school during the pandemic. I had, and I will say this, growing up poor is not fun. But if you're an artist and things break around you, that's just a new canvas. And I say that because there was just this giant board. I think something in the house had broken. And I was like, well, if we're not fixing it, I'm taking it. And my parents were like, sure, go ahead. And so I started like this idea of like really discussing the horrificness of white supremacy because I'm a horror illustrator and I really wanted to, like, I was going to like draw this like KKK figure, but like it was built into a skull and there's going to be wearing the flag and everything, and it was like so huge, and so I wanted it to be more terrifying. And so I'm a very tactile artist, and I was like, I want to add these smeared handprints. I am not taking hours to sketch, paint, create, and shade that. So I said, we're going to go a little old school. We're going to put this red fluid acrylic in between these two ashy hands and just start rubbing the walls. And that's what we did. And I think one of the things I enjoy about the piece too is because I'm 5'6". I'm not tall by anyone's standard. It's because of that. Some of those like higher handprints aren't on there. They got so much drag because gravity was like, okay, like you got up there and now you're done. Yeah. And so there's, I don't know, something about that felt very good. I really wanted to put the handprints, I feel like, make people remember that there are people behind these things. And so that's kind of why I really stuck with that. And I really wanted the flames and the houses because with another piece I'd done previously called Kwani, which is up at Sika, one of the things I played with was like just these very, you know, like the Monopoly houses, those green houses. Yeah. And whatnot. I didn't realize how terrible of a game Monopoly is when you're being gentrified because you're just sitting here like, is this what these niggas do? Like, is this what y'all be doing?
Yeah. Literally buying land, but like, this is mine now.
Exactly.
Oh, and you thought that was yours?
I kind of took the idea, and so I just made like this general green shape that was going to be a house. And then because that's so much, right? Because that's the other thing. I take pictures of the gentrification happening around me. So some of the pieces I'm making at the moment, like the background of it is like before that construction site really became a construction site. Right. And so once I had gotten that shade of green, I was like, if I just put a couple black lines and like a shitty brand name, this is now a house under construction, and now this house
Yeah.
is gentrified. And so I've just always been playing like the very simple shape of a house. I am definitely making sure I like render and actually draw one, just because artists should never stop improving. I don't believe in the idea of I've learned everything. You haven't.
Yeah.
You haven't. There's someone somewhere that can teach you something. And so that's just kind of like why I kept that house there, because I really wanted gentrification. The center of it is always housing. And so I felt like putting this horror there and knowing that gentrification is kind of acting as this lighter fluid to everything in a sense. I really felt like that was going to be what pushed over the edge. And then because it's like a black house and the background is like this really dark chocolatey brown, it just, and then there's a red and then he's blue. I love color theory, so like it just, everything pops in just the right way because of that now. So yeah.
And with his face morphing, what do you see that as? Or what's the meaning of his face morphing?
People don't talk about the fact that poverty can affect your relationship with your body. I remember when I was still on Jones Street, there was, and this isn't get too dark, but there was, and I say this as no judgment, but for a lot of the time I lived in Raleigh, it was 9 of us in one bathroom. And one day during the pandemic, and no, this is after my family has had to come to terms that we're going to get evicted at the end of the year, essentially. And because our landlords were like, well, we're not fixing anything here, even though you bought the house, up the rent, and then got mad when, you know, capitalism.
Money.
You know, like we was fine, honestly. But yeah, they had done all that, and then and basically what happened was the toilet stopped working. And our house, I believe, was built in the 30s, and because of that, all the plumbing centered there. So the toilet was backing up into the tub. And so I remember the day that happened. When you're poor, you just become Mr. Fix-It. Especially if you're like especially if you're an adult man in the house, not to assign gender roles, but my dad was working a double shift that day. So it was like, you know, hello, Mr. Fix-It. And so the toilet wasn't working. And I remember I went to Food Line. I dropped the one that I worked at. I dropped over $100 on Drano, cleaner, snakes, everything that I could do to get it out. I was going at this for hours. I remember it got to the point where I was like emptying everything out and trying to just get it work. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I like went over to my mother, tears in my eyes, and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna go break. And then mama said, what does that mean? I left the room and just screamed. I don't think my mother's ever heard me scream like that. But I screamed for 20 minutes on end, and then I went to class. Yeah.
Not to interrupt, but of course you did. Of course you went to class, because what other choice is there?
Exactly.
There's no other choice. You know, it's either I don't pass and don't get the credentials that I need to then move up to the place that I want to be. Like there's that of course.
Exactly. And then it was also like I was tired. I had spent my entire morning. I didn't like, it was to the point where I was like, I'm just physically tired.
Yeah.
And it was funny enough, when I was screaming, I was listening to the audiobook of what I had to read for class. So I was doing homework during all this.
I know, because like you can't stop. Like you're literally gonna be multitasking when dealing with everything. And again, this conversation really illuminates that piece.
Yeah.
Because again, from what you're saying, poverty really affects your body.
It does.
And you really see that in your character. Which, does this character have a name?
No,
not yet.
Honestly. Well, because when I first drew that character, honestly, I was trying to get to the point where I didn't like, because I love also working in ink. I'm not gonna say I'm multifaceted, but I do get to kind of tell that I'm fluent with certain types of paint, and I'm also fluent with like a lot of drawing mediums. So that's just because I worked at Jerry's. A lot of the stuff is transferable. If you can work in oil paint, you can low-key work at anything.
Literally.
And all that to say that I just kind of, I don't know, I drew him because I wanted to get back into doing ink illustration. I also started to kind of understand why ink is the more prominent medium when it comes to horror illustration, because that layering is so perfect. Yes. And if you're drawing like gore or things that are creepy, sometimes the flesh is translucent. So I'm drawing it, it's like the veins are popping, or there's like all these pustules and things. I need to be able to get transparency, and I also need to be able to opacity. And So I started the sketch like that, and I really got into the line work. But then I got the residency that half of the moment, and I was like, screw it. The first mural I did died. I told them in the interview that I wasn't going to let that happen again. I went up to them and said, can I paint on the walls? And they said, if you paint them back, and I said, that was your first mistake. And I went and I started painting it.
Because that sounds like a yes.
Yes. And, and that's what I did. And so I got the sketch, I put it on the projector, I threw it up. And at first, I was just going to be like this cool little image. And I guess as time went on, because I think I ended up writing It Was Born from Rot, I think my second month into it. And so after like being there for a minute and like telling my studio mates, because that was the thing too, I didn't want to take up all the walls because I'm like, y'all are in here too. But they're like, we don't necessarily paint murals or anything, so you're free to do your chaos. Just like certain parts are obvious, like, yeah, I don't want that to overshadow, and whatnot, and they're very reasonable. And so I was like, well, I have like 3 or 4 walls, and the way that the image was coming together, it looked, I'm sure you've read comics before. Like like every couple of chapters, especially if it's a volume, there's like that flagship image.
Yes.
And so that's really all I wanted to invoke with it. And so after I decided that I wanted to tell this story, I actually completely abandoned that mural and started the one, all the line work on the one in the back, because that was going to be the most intensive one. And I actually didn't start working back on that one until like earlier this month, honestly. So he had been sitting there essentially like barely shaded and barely rendered and everything.
Are we talking about the one with the sword or the bigger one?
No, because he's not a mural. He's a full-on drawing. He's
right. That one's a full-on drawing.
And I'm talking about the one in the background that actually has the rock in it.
Yes.
So I threw myself at that one completely because I wanted that one to be like the ultimate image. And so I finally circled back to this one, and I ended up not giving him a name because I didn't necessarily want him to have one, just because I wanted the idea of him being like this avatar. That's why like even I didn't like give him a specific skin tone, like he's blue and whatnot. And even with that has like a whole history of how the black body's been represented. But I also wanted the contrast and everything, and it just something about him not having a name. And then even with that, not everyone knows it's a guy. That's the other thing too, because the features, I ended up not giving him facial hair. So because of that, a lot of people are just kind of like, it's a person, and anyone can have short hair. So it kind of allows people to treat them like an avatar and whatnot. And
I have to take a step back because we have to talk about your residency at ArtSpace.
Yes.
How you got it, and then also what your work at ArtSpace is going to culminate in.
So I am the HBCU artist in residency. I just actually found this out from the head of ArtSpace, Carly. She confirmed with me that this is the first HBCU artist in residency in the country, and I am the first Morehouse nigga to get it.
Wow.
Yeah, so I kind of get
to,
yes, because at first when they did specifically for North Carolina HBCUs.
Yeah.
Which is nice, but there's only but so many.
Yes.
And then like after that first and that second year, they extended it like to anyone who had graduated from who lived in the state of North Carolina.
That's awesome.
So I'm the first one from Morehouse to do it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Nice. And what was that process like applying for the residency?
Well, because I applied twice. I applied for the first time for 2024. I didn't get it. Which looking back at the before I have now, the before I had there, I was like, you were never gonna get it. Like, let me tell you, baby. I'm holding my hand. I'm holding him watching this. You aren't special.
No. We recognize the growth.
Like the level of skill, it was very like, that's cute. That's cute. You did that, Marion. You did that.
Gold star.
Gold star. That's it. It wasn't necessarily what needed to be done, but I got first runner up.
Oh, that's
which
beautiful.
Was a huge, and I was a bitter bitch. I was like, man, they don't know nothing. Like I'm sitting there, you're like, what about me? What about my chance? And so I applied again the second year, and it was actually really funny because that's when I had started Kwani, and my work just started to see like a huge uptick in quality. I think that's just because I got into the process of like drawing more every day, and then even with that, I've gotten the chance to talk with certain contemporaries like Jermaine Powell. He's worked with the museum a lot, and I remember I had a show with him at the Dorothea Dix Art and Film Festival, and it was actually the first time I'd ever shown with. It was actually probably like the first big art show I had done really since I had graduated college in any way, shape, or form. I was like showing with artists who I had known for a minute, like even Eric had a piece in there. And so I get to JP, and of course we've talked because we had stuff in the store, and he's like, I didn't know you made art. And he's like, can I see it? And so I show him what he did. He's like, oh, this is great. You need to work bigger. And I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, we can both tell that you don't like this 18 by 24 BS, right? And I was like, that doesn't have anything. Work bigger. And then went off into the start set.
You're welcome.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, you're that 18 by 24 starting to feel a little bit tight, right? Yeah, get off of it.
Yeah.
And so I started working bigger. I actually started to like, because that's the thing too, finding certain art supplies.
Yeah.
If you're not connecting, it can be very annoying, especially if you're like me, do a lot of drawings. I like big paper. And so what I've had to start doing is I'll go to a local art supply store. They have like these 32-foot rolls that are like 3 feet tall of mixed media paper. I'll buy the roll from them, and then I go to a print shop in Wake Forest, and they'll cut it, but they'll deliver it too.
Oh.
So I was able to get like 6 foot by 3 feet sheets and a whole bunch of others that was cut from the scrap delivered to the museum for like $20.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So definitely gonna enjoy working with that print shop, especially because like if you upload the files, you can order the prints and we're delivering them. So I'm like, okay, great.
Wow.
Y'all really want my money in here?
Yes, please take it.
Take it, because FedEx. Printing at FedEx?
No.
Never again. I will never be that poor again. I don't care what happens with these tariffs. I will never do it again. Especially now at 27, because I used to be able to like, are you a student? Yeah, but I don't have my here's a discount. I'm approaching 30. That doesn't work.
I know.
Okay, wait.
I know. Listen. Be kind to the approaching dirties. We're trying.
I could probably be like, I'm a master student.
Listen,
what program?
No. You can get away with it. 2,000%. You can get away with it.
But yeah, and so, yeah.
Awesome.
You know.
But I'm so excited for your residency at Art Space, because I love the idea of more people seeing your art and being confronted with it. Because like you said, you working in horror is interesting, because thinking about the person who contacted you and wanting something that they considered beautiful when that's not what you're working in is very interesting.
And even with that, being a Black horror artist is interesting because I'm not saying I don't ever draw white people who aren't Black, but I exclusively almost completely draw Black people. Yeah. And the issue with that when you're a horror artist is horror has brutality. And there's a time where it's like, I don't want to draw a whole bunch of Black bodies being brutalized, because going back to that conversation of fetishization, I don't want, people of the Caucasian position coming into these spaces being like, I want that for my living room, and it's a Black person being decapitated. Yeah. They already put art like that in these halls and everything. Like, there's so much artwork where the Black body is being violated. And so what I've learned is you have to play with the power dynamics. Like, are these Black people in this image being eaten by zombies? Yes, but one is cutting off the zombie's head. Like, they're not all gonna die. Right. Like, so I feel like the thing with it is like you have to almost, for Black horror appreciators, put just a little bit of hope. And then even with it, like going back to the history of horror itself, why are we always dying? We leave. I'm not staying for this. We're always the first ones. And I'm like, but he run the fastest. How does that even work? That doesn't make any sense.
Like, no way.
And so it just becomes this thing of like, I want to create this horrific nature. I want to discuss the struggles of the Black body, but I don't want Black people being traumatized every time they look at my work. And I don't want white people feeding off of that. Right.
Because that gets into, what do they call it?
Trauma porn.
Yeah, trauma porn. But to jump off that, I want to talk about that larger image with the man with the sword. Yes. Because I think that strikes a perfect balance. And I remember when I came to your art studio and was filming you, saying how I love that this is a sword, because just growing up with video games and stuff, like the person with the sword is coming here to save us, but again, giving that hope, because at the bottom of the image you do see trauma. You do see sadness, but as you go up, you see this figure with the sword and you immediately get, this is a hero. And I love that he's in a white, white beater, pants. Like, he's not in a cape or anything. Like, no. This is an everyday person. And that sword communicates a lot. Yeah. So can we just go into that idea of hope and how this image gives hope, and also what that sword represents?
So I think I'll start with the image giving hope. A lot of people assume, and this, of course, because of like white supremacist stereotypes, that the people in the hood don't want nothing better or they don't want to fight for nothing. I remember there's a dude who used to come to my food line and one night, and this in College Park, and there's not a lot of money in this neighborhood. He didn't have a car, he would always have to walk. But he made sure there was a coat drive in that neighborhood almost every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then even going to the church I used to go to when Bishop Sakala Powell was running it, there was a soup kitchen every day, including Sunday. So there was always somewhere to find food. There was always somewhere to find care. Or even like going back to the church, and this isn't all like just coming out of the church, but I remember there were a lot of black boys who had gotten killed growing up in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And at the time, pastor, now Bishop Staccato Powell, one Sunday, it was the summer, I think 2010, he said, I want every man in here, ages 5 to 25, to get their nappy headed behind up in this pulpit after church. And I better see all of you. And we all just sit back like,
okay,
shit, I guess I'll go. Like, I'm 11, so I don't have a choice. Like,
my mom gonna
so,
me.
exactly. Like, I go up there one night, and he's like, I'm tired of watching y'all die. And he's like, y'all gonna start coming here every Saturday, and we're gonna start doing things. And so, through the MIP, that was the first time I ever went to New York. That was the first time I've ever worked on a farm. That was the first time I ever went to California. I saw my first Kende Wiley because I went to the museum at one point. Like, there was so much that happened because of that and whatnot. And it all just goes back to this idea of like, does hope exist in the ghetto? And the answer is yes. It's just y'all don't want to care about it or put any money towards it or help these people build themselves out of it.
Exactly, but they're still heroes.
Exactly. Like my first art teacher, hello Miss Shirley.
Hi.
Miss Shirley Smith at Carborough Art Center. My first art teacher was a black woman. And I never don't tell people that because that is huge. I'm going to this PWI middle school and whatnot, elementary and middle school and whatnot, and why I can stand that art teacher? How you an art teacher and you're not fun? How are you an art teacher and you're not fun? You're supposed to be fun. You're just boring and you're stale. You're stale as a person.
Stale.
Okay? And I go to Miss Shirley's because the teen center is like you have to be in middle school or above, which you know, because you want teens. Not everything can just be for little kids. People have to find somewhere to be. I go over there one day, my older sister gets us signed up, and they're like, oh yeah, we have art classes. They're about art classes. And they say, yeah, they're right there in the back. You just walk in. I go back in. There's like some old, I think Donnie McCurker, because she's old school now. Some Donnie McCurker
was definitely playing.
She got some snacks out. She has all these different little art books. And there's just this tiny little older black woman with the biggest smile and the thickest North Carolina accent you ever heard. And she's like, well, come on, baby. Come on. You say you wanted to come to art. What do you want to do? And that was the thing, too, because her art class, it didn't have the structure of this is an assignment. It had the structure of what do you want to make. And all of this is happening in College Park. Yeah. Meanwhile, while we're being gentrified, there's like this little power box that's out by Tarborough's youth center and whatnot, and people are drawing swastikas over it. And it's just it's just this constant like reminder, like the people of the hood are gonna fight for themselves and they're gonna fight for the people they love. And so that's why I felt it was very important to have this character existing. It's like, this is just a nigga. You know, like that's Mr. Ronnie and his daddy work on cars and Mr. Ronnie works at the UPS. Yeah. But he's here. Yes. And he cares and whatnot. And even like adding the other little things because he's in the middle. And I also went with the sword because there's a lot of religious undertone with that, like the sword of God and like all these other things. And there's been so many times in history where Black people have like seen our liberational figures as almost religious. Yes. Harriet Tubman was called Moses. Yes. Snick, even though they were trying to be smartasses about it, we're calling Martin Luther King the Lord between them because they got tired of his, they were tired of him and whatnot. They thought he was a little bit ugly, but they worked with him, and obviously, what happened needed to happen. But yeah, and so that all just kind of culminates, and then I also, because there's a feminine figure at the top who is like this kind of all-powerful character, and that was because artists always draw what they know. Funny enough, growing up, my mom was constantly asking, "Are you?" Because I was only drawing women, and then I grew up and got older, and I don't know what, but I feel like a switch happened in college where I was like, I'm just drawing dudes on a regular basis. I still draw women, of course, but because of that, I didn't want this to be like the men come in and save the people. It was just boring and heteronormative. I'm queer, non-binary. Like I don't have time for the pink goes with the pink and the blue goes with the blue, and so I wanted to make sure that she kind of stood as this like divine figure of liberation and this all powerful being of hope. I didn't want it to just be like the only time you see a Black woman on this image was she's suffering.
Yes.
I like the idea of her being something outside of this oppression and that brokenness. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for
all
the wine.
that. To wrap this up, I have to ask that cliche, but it's needed. Where do you see yourself in your art in 5 to 10 years?
I've always wanted to be a professor.
Yes.
That's one of my goals.
I was hoping you were going to talk about this. Okay,
yes. Just because specifically working with HBCUs, a lot of people don't want to talk about the fact that without the HBCU, we wouldn't really have the Harlem Renaissance.
Yeah.
And like the ways in which, like, even like Clark's art, and I need y'all to put some more respect on Clark Atlanta. Y'all gonna stop playing her face. And I say that because
I like how you point to the camera.
No, because y'all gonna stop playing on Clark.
Yeah, let them know.
We love Spelman and Morehouse, but damn it, like
Clark is where it's at.
Okay, some of my best friends went to Clark, but
Yes.
But like Clark, like historically, is like one of the first places to hold like Negro art competitions. And you're gonna sit here and tell me, and like they have a mural that was still there from the 1920s.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be quiet about that. I'm not supposed to want to protect that. Mm-hmm. And Black people know that Black artists need protection, but I don't know if we connect the dots that we have to do it, because we all love that first scene in Black Panther where Killmonger kills that curator. We all loved it. I remember when I first saw there was so much like clapping this and that. I'm sitting here like, okay. Now when it comes to actual Black artists, are y'all gonna still have that energy?
Yeah.
Because I'm still in that Afrocentric canon, whether you want to admit it or not. And so I just would like to see more fire put towards like HBCU artists and whatnot. So yeah.
200%. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, that is it for us today. Again, I am Tasha Smith, your NC art curator, and this is Backyard Art Talk, and we're wrapping up with Marion Tisdale IV. Tell them where they can find you.
Yes. So I currently have the residence at Art Space on East Davie Street. That's going to be downtown Raleigh. I'm also on Instagram as he draws with a Z. Obviously that'll be in the link and whatnot.
Yes.
And yeah, feel free to contact me, hit me up, ask me some questions. Like, it's okay if you come to stereo buy nothing, but damn it, ask me a question.
Something.
Okay, like
good questions.
Yes.
Not why does he look like that? We want good questions.
Because he's a nigga. That's the answer.
And we wrap it up on that.
Okay.